everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. This is your tech startup podcast for Thursday, September the 4th, 2014. Today we are once again recording at the beautiful Communitech Hub, and the place is completely buzzing today. I haven't seen this many people here all summer, I guess.
A lot of energy.
Yeah, now that we're into the fall, everything's happening, right? My name is Darren Conley. I'm a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And with me, as always, is my co-host, fellow tech entrepreneur, Stephen Campbell. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm good, Darren. I just went back to school on Tuesday, too, of this week.
Wow.
So, third year of my ITID diploma. And just the energy at the school is amazing.
Now, I remember you saying in the past that you could really relate to that one character on the TV show Community.
Yep.
Being a little bit older and going back to the college life. Do you still feel that now that you're starting a new semester?
That's funny you mentioned that because Mike Kirkup from our last TSP Weekly, the director of Velocity, we were talking with him a little bit about matching partners of startups,
right?
And how there was a generational gap, and statistically, when the partners or the co-founders are closer to the same age, they're more successful.
Oh.
And I was thinking about that, and I find that I get a lot of energy out of youth. And I really enjoy the generation gap.
Right.
And that when you and I, who are close in age, sit, we talk about different things, Doctor Who for 45 minutes.
or Babylon 5.
Right.
That's establishing our geek cred on this podcast. Here,
exactly. So we have a lot of common things that Mike was talking about are an advantage. But I often find that I'm really looking to find new things and discover, and that the youth is able to do that for me. So I have a nugget for you. This is completely random.
Sure.
But do you know what Quiblo is?
I have no idea.
It's, I guess, a verb. If I use it in context, I would say...
Do you Quiblo a person?
Was that Quiblo?
All right.
Would be the context. And it's actually a little song. I'm going to try to play just a tiny bit. I don't know if it'll work here.
Oh, no.
Just to give you a little taste here. This is my new favorite song.
Are we being Quibloed right now?
It sounds a little suggestive, man.
So that's it. It's kind of, there's kind of 70s boom chicka wow wow there.
Yeah, exactly.
But really, I don't think any of us could Quiblo, because what Quibloing is you have a Whopper in one hand.
Yeah.
You have a 40 in the other hand, which is a malt beverage or a beer.
Yes.
And you're cruising on a skateboard.
Oh, on a skateboard.
Are you Quiblo? So you have a cheeseburger or a Whopper. Sorry, not a cheeseburger. A Whopper and a 40.
But why do we need a specialized word for that very, I would assume, a unique situation?
Yeah, because you can't do it on a bicycle or a car. It's got to be a skateboard because you have to have both hands free. So, so Quiblo. Are you Quiblo? No, I've never and probably cannot Quiblo.
Yeah. I'm
going to go Quiblo tonight.
Yeah, right. Good luck. Wear a helmet.
You guys have no idea about my longboarding experience.
Longboarding,
really?
I like that.
Okay, nice. A little bit of longboarding or
longboard, like a
down the hills in California. And stuff
like a skateboard.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, I should actually introduce our guest here. Mr. Dave Shak is joining us for this week's episode as our guest. He is the Chief Technology Officer at RENOMii, which is a home renovation based kind of startup, integrating some technology into the process. And we can get him to tell us a little bit more about how that all works later in the podcast. But let me just ask, how are you doing today, Dave?
I'm good. I'm good. It is nice to be at the hub. I spent a bunch of time here before. I do some mentoring here for Velocity, who's Mike Kirkup is leader thereof.
Yep.
Right.
And I spent a bunch of time here because RENOMii actually began here, just down the hall, actually.
Wow.
So I know the coffee well, and I know this meeting room well, and it's a pretty happening place.
Yeah, it's bright and open, and
I sort of didn't like leaving, actually, because it's got lots of energy on itself, and I'm able to sort of filter it when I need to, but I want to. It's nice to be in it when I'm here too.
Yeah, I might have trouble working here and focusing on some code or something that you really need to sort of put the headphones on. But boy, I'd love to be here sort of once or twice a week to get that shot of energy in the arm and that motivation, and just to see what everybody else is doing and the buzzing beehive.
Absolutely.
It's kind of scary now that I've been kind of in this environment for maybe upwards of a year, maybe. I can't walk anywhere without seeing three people that I should talk to. So it's not bad. I want to and should.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to sort of just have that kind of feeling of being integrated in this sort of ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great feeling of community and brother and sisterhood for sure.
Sure.
Very
Absolutely.
open doors, and we've experienced that with TSP Weekly. That everybody that we approach is very amenable to talking to us about what we're doing and coming on the show.
And what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, now that we're all feeling the buzz, let's jump into our first article that we want to talk about this week. So there's a hardware startup on Indiegogo right now. It's called, I'm assuming we pronounce it Button. It's just spelled bttn. I guess they're opposed to vowels somehow.
URLs,
You got to buy a vowel.
Yeah, you got to buy a vowel.
They're bootstrapping.
That word would cost a lot of money.
There we go. It's called Button, and strangely enough, the whole startup is based around a button. It's a piece of hardware. It looks exactly like a button. It is a button. You can plug the button into your web connected device, program the button to execute. I guess it's kind of like programming it to do a macro like you would in your word processor or something like that. But essentially you can make it do any sort of web or technology enabled thing that you might want to do at the press of a button. So in their demonstration video, they showed a gentleman who hit the button when he sat down on his computer, and it kind of brought up his work that he had to work on that day. So
it was like a power switch for him?
I guess. And power / loading up your whatever program you're using and the file
It seems
you're
kind of
working
insecure.
Insecure? Well, I don't know. Are you talking psychologically insecure or
that
technically
too.
insecure?
But insecure meaning, who else could walk up to his desktop and just sort of press a button and see what he's
The
doing?
cat.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
the
and
cat.
I'm assuming you'd have to, when you're choosing how you're going to execute commands with the button, you have to take those kind of things into consideration, right? So I think the very first kind of thing you see is there's a guy who wakes up. As soon as he wakes up, there's a button beside him on his nightside table, and he hits it, and I think it turns on the TV to the news channel and turns on his lamp maybe, and it looks like his thermostat was switched from nighttime to daytime settings, and maybe it started making his toast or something all at once.
Yes.
That's
so
neat.
it kind of synchronized with his smart hardware that he had in his house. They also showed people hailing a taxi kind of at the front lobby of a business or a hotel, maybe by hitting the button, or even kids checking in when they get home from school, hit the button and it sends a text message to their parents saying, "I'm home now," and whatever kind of
I'm
thing.
a big fan of the button. There's a Ren and Stimpy episode where it's just Stimpy and the announcer and a circular table and a big shiny red button.
Right.
And it's the history eraser button.
Right.
And the announcer is asking, will he touch it? And he's charged by Ren to guard the button.
Right.
He eventually pushes the button, of course, and he erases history.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah, it's a good episode. But I often think of, is this the beginning of the Internet of Things?
Can I just say though, before you
You
get
going
away
back to
from before you get away from the history eraser button, I could easily see that being a use case where some guy's sitting there surfing the internet, and he hears somebody about to walk into the room, and he starts furiously hitting the erase history button just to be
It's
safe.
literally a history erasing button.
Yeah.
But in the context of your browser. Sure.
That's right.
It's a powered up Control Z.
Right.
It's not just back
boy.
one.
Right.
Yep.
There you go. Right.
So for me, when I think about that, I like the idea. It's almost like a Raspberry Pi could be programmed to do something like that. But I think that Roger's smart home monitoring and the Internet of Things and smart fridges and all that is kind of swirling around. I wonder if this is sort of a first volley into that. You can now use a button to do whatever you want. Put it into the development or developer's hands. And
sure.
If it was cheap enough.
Yeah.
Then you could get a bunch of them and you could do a bunch of things, and you need to have a nice setup for it too, because I've got a bunch of connected devices in my house too, so thermostats and cameras and whatever. So if I could easily make have some sort of interface to say, okay, this button I want it to be touch my thermostat and turn it up to whatever,
sure,
without having to do some sort of shell script programming, which I could do.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd rather not.
Right.
It looks like they've done some marketing because it's a very shiny button, and it's in a it's bigger than red, and you can put the text of what you want on it. I don't know if you're programming it or something, because one said taxi.
It said taxi on it, so I don't know if it's an actual like physical cover or something that they put on
or
it,
they're programming it with LED,
or if it's a screen that's built into the button itself that changes the text. I'm sure it would cost more money to do it that way, right? But
it's not the easy button from Staples. They're not spray painting them on.
But it looks kind of like that. I mean, the size and the form factor kind of looks like that, right? Yeah. But
it's a neat idea, and I could I could even see some stuff like as I'm leaving the house. I want to turn lights off, and there's a bunch of things that happen when I leave the house.
Yeah. So you hit that one button, and it all happens at once.
Right.
Yeah. Party's over. You close the party down.
Or the panic button.
Party shuts down when I shut down.
Or if you think somebody is, trying to break into your home, you hit the panic button. The steel bars come down over top of your windows, and
or just the party on button, and the stripper pole and the disco ball come down. I'd be out of there in a flash.
Party on button.
I think it would be great if it was cheap, because then you could have a bunch of them. But if it costed like, I don't know, let's say over $50,
right?
Then no one would want it, and I wouldn't want it, because I have a bunch of things. Like I have a Nest thermostat. Mm-hmm. It's sort of a fancy sort of connected thing. I can walk over to the wall and say away on it. It's not that hard,
right?
But if I have, if I could spend $50 to make the button do a few things, like make my thermostat go away and turn my lights off and whatever, I'd do that.
Yeah, it might be a compatibility issue too, because I've got headphones that I can use on my computer, but I can't use on my PS3, and it's like that should be figured out.
And
so
that's
I don't
what
know
I mean
about
by
this button.
like having a nice interface, because like if you have. It would be nice if it could just execute shell scripts. That's nice, but it's got to be able to plug into, this kind of thermostat and that kind of lights and that kind of.
Yeah, it's got to play nice with everybody.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and I'm just looking on their Indiegogo campaign here. It looks like it's $99 is kind of the base price, unless you're buying multiples, and you can get 10 for $900.
Can you imagine how easy your life would be if you got 500 of those buttons?
No, I can't.
For him, it's like,
you could build yourself a keyboard.
Yeah, it's Charlie.
Keyboard.
It's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Very expensive keyboard.
And then you could program each button to be an individual letter on the keyboard.
Yeah, you don't even speak anymore. You just push your buttons.
That's good. I'm thinking about other adaptations like. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I could teach her to push a button to do something.
Mm-hmm. It's true,
because I don't want to do those things.
But you got to be careful of her walking up and just bam, 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 depending on what you.
Or the dog. You train the dog to.
It's true. When the dog is hungry, he presses the button and it dispenses food or something.
Like and your daughter, you have to teach her that you have to put the bacon on first, because the eggs cook very quickly. So then
there you go.
The eggs go on second, and then the toast goes down. So
and as soon as you said button and dog, I had all these Pavlovian kind of thoughts come into my head, right, about conditioning. I hit the button and make somebody salivate when a bell goes off.
You hungry for a cheeseburger and a 40 right now?
Yeah, I think I'll skip the. I can't remember the term.
Hold the skateboard.
What's the term again?
Quiblo. It might be Queblo, but I'm going with Quiblo.
The Quiblo the Queblo.
Well, actually, what the button next to my bed? What the button next to my bed would be? Put some kibble into the dog food's dish so that it would push a button, and subsequently other things would happen. So I would basically set off a chain reaction, and good things would happen at the end.
You hope, unless there's one tiny little problem with one point of the chain and the entire thing explodes. And
yes, your robot army revolts.
Next thing you know, there's dog food everywhere. One thing I'll say about the button, I like their tagline, which is the simplest user interface in the world, and I think that's pretty much true.
That's
right?
arguable.
It's a single button, right? But I guess it's arguable. The only thing I'm not sure about with this, and I understand you have to build a piece of hardware to kind of get the attention and the hype, but I can build an app on my smartphone that is a big button that you could essentially program to do pretty much any of these things too, without having to buy a separate piece of hardware. I can just download a piece of software. So. And maybe people want that tactile response, right? Maybe people want the, seeing a device that I can slam it with my hand and instead of just kind of tapping a screen.
Yeah, and oftentimes my phone is all the way in my pocket, so I've got to pull that out. And,
And marketing is so powerful. So if a button can't become cool, like we were putting wood paneling on station wagons, guys. So like, and that was because that was cool. So think of how ridiculous that is. You're putting wood on a car.
No, that was functional.
Right.
I'm just thinking of when you're talking about.
I think we could be talked into a button.
Well, when you're talking about like the problem-solving model of businesses, like what problem is this thing solving? And essentially, I think Dave kind of summed up when he said, like, I have to reach all the way into my pocket and turn on my phone to hit the button there. Yeah. This way, I can just go. Burp.
It's funny. I way back when I was at a Microsoft interview. Right. I interviewed at Microsoft, and they asked me typical sort of Microsoft question. This was a long time ago because I'm an old guy.
Sure.
Not that old, but
how many marbles fit in a school bus?
Well, they asked that question too, but they asked, how would you make a microwave easier? So my point was,
make customers smarter.
Well, that's a good one because they're pretty damn simple. But my thought was, so you've got a number of steps, very much like the button. So you've got the steps in the button are the steps to replace the button are, get your hands free.
Yeah.
Put your hand in your pocket. Pull your phone out, turn it on, push up a couple buttons.
Yeah.
Whereas the button is one button. The replacement for the microwave was, so typically you have to take something out of the fridge, take the packaging off, put it in the microwave. Yeah. And I was like, at the interview, I was like, we could save a step if the microwave just found you. You could just it could just microwave anything from anywhere. So you just put it on the counter and it would microwave that. Yeah. That would save a step.
You have a little device mounted in the top corner of your kitchen that zaps
that was
stuff
it.
From afar.
Yeah, because I don't want to have to go through the trouble of opening that door.
Yeah, of course.
And putting the thing in. That's just wasted time.
So did you get the job offer?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
They liked your microwave idea, huh?
That's great. I would have gone with like a brain-powered fridge that microwaves it. So I just think about it, and the fridge actually microwaves it. So when I open the fridge, a little section is.
The problem is when you have that dream about microwaving your fridge. Whatever milk or something like that, you wake up with a big mess in your fridge. Well, now that we've transitioned into the absurd, let's move on to our next article here. Actually, very much related to brain power. So. There's a new brain training startup up there called Memorado, and I think you need to pronounce it with like a Spanish accent to really capture the
you sound
feeling
like a bullfighter there.
Memorado, wow. Or you can just say Memorado or something boring, right? I'm sure that's what it's supposed to be. They just raised a whole bunch of cash. I'll tell you in 1 second how much they've raised. 1.3 million, and they're not the first kids on the block to put out brain training apps. There's
Luminosity is the U.S. guys, and from what I read, Luminosity did a lot of the initial customer training of what this idea that you can take your brain to the gym, and they did a lot of marketing for it.
Playing
so they got
mini games and so forth.
The exercise, their ad is really well done.
Sure.
I can go to the gym and exercise my body, but I can't do it for my brain, and now I can.
That's right. So they're, I guess, kind of capitalizing on a market that's already kind of been primed by a few different other people who have made the entry. But they still raised 1.3 million, which I think demonstrates there's some sort of hunger still for more entries into this market, which is interesting. Sorry, Dave.
It's you always ask, when companies are kind of starting up and a replacement for Luminosity or an addition, it would be what's the value add? Like how are you better? How are you different? Yeah. And apparently they must have had a story.
Well, they're British.
Yeah. So rather than training my brain in like American or Canadian English, I will
pounds.
Yes, I will be speaking.
Well, I think they have this idea that you're targeting specific, in their words, cognitive muscles, right? So I want to improve my memory, or I want to improve my retention of, say, people's names, versus I want to improve my ability to do mental math calculations. Versus, I don't know, I want to improve my ability to be persuasive in arguments. And so they offer kind of targeted exercises to deal with each of those parts.
Yeah, their value proposition was really what you're saying there, Darren. And they drilled down to another level to say, we're going to sort of test you and see what your weaknesses are. Right. So that we're going to double down on giving you a specific training to bring your weaknesses up.
Right.
So it's not sort of like luminosity, just go to the gym and lift all the brain weights.
Right.
They're going to say, you have real trouble identifying the word blue when we show it to you when it's red.
You got some really weak pecs,
right?
So we're gonna work on those.
Yeah,
I can't believe you're staring right at Darren when you say he's got weak pecs.
Ironically, he was actually staring at you, but anyway.
But he wasn't looking at my pecs.
Anything could be happening in an audio-only podcast.
That's right.
We could be sitting here in our boxers.
I have the pecs for radio for sure.
Now, let me ask you guys: Have either of you ever tried any of these brain training kind of apps?
I just signed up. I was just playing with Luminosity. I met with Darren last night.
Yeah.
While I was waiting for Darren, what was I doing? Playing with Luminosity.
Really?
Really.
I had no idea. We didn't even plan that when we asked you to come on the podcast here today. That's crazy. Okay.
So
yeah.
I have some knowledge of this stuff. It works. Like it certainly, it's the whole idea of.
Have you felt your own brain, increasing in size or ability since using this?
I've definitely gotten better at the games.
Okay.
Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, Dave.
So we'll see. I don't know if I'm not sure if this has gotten better or not.
Sure.
Things have gotten whatever, but.
Sure.
I've gotten better at the games, which I suppose means that I'm more aware of these things they're testing for.
Well, now let me address what you've just said with a little bit of research, if we can call it research, that I've done on my own. So there was an article on cracked.com, which actually does research.
Isn't that the world's leading source for intellectual material?
It very well could be if you measure by popularity, I think.
Alfred E. Newman uses his middle initial, which is very intelligent.
It's true. But anyway, on Cracked, they were talking about, they take real studies when they're writing their top 5 reasons for whatever kind of articles, and one of the things they talked about was these brain training apps in general. It seems to show, the studies seem to show, that really they're very good at training you on doing the exercises that you're doing within the app. But there's very, very little to demonstrate that becoming better at the app games translates into anything useful outside of the app games. That's the big transitionary jump that has to be demonstrated yet. And as far as I know, they still haven't demonstrated that that's
funny
case.
Because
so let me ask you, Darren. Then do you think I've been using Luminosity for the last 3 months every hour, once a day?
I don't know, man. Have you?
Or
Because
not?
I thought you seem.
Am I getting smarter? Or flatlining a bit.
I don't think you're a dumb dude by any stretch of the mind, so to speak. But I haven't noticed any mental hurdles that have been jumped.
Yeah, I have not been training every hour every day for 3 months, but just curious to see. Because I read the same thing. I think the exact same. Like when I play a video game, I get better at that video game. And there's a scientific sweet spot. It's called the flow. And if the video game is too easy, you get restless. And if it's too hard, you get depressed. So they've done some clinical research to say, as you go along in a video game, they do increase the difficulty because if it's too easy, you're done. So there's a flow that you have to keep in, and that's true in a lot of things.
Well,
right?
and actually, the article about this group, which I should say their name again because we've mentioned Luminosity so many times, Memorado. They've highlighted that really they're still working on getting the personalization level tweaked so that they can target your weakest areas the best, making sure that your brain training translates into daily real life progress, and also making sure, and this is what you were just talking about, making sure that you can create an experience that can continue to be fun and engaging even after you've done it for several weeks or months or even years. Kind of doing Sudoku puzzles over and over kind of gets boring after a while, right? You have to keep people engaged.
And I just saw a stat in my class yesterday, my mobile class, that mobile app retention over a 3-month period is like 24%. So if you download an app, you're only going to use it for 3 months or so, and then it's out. And I can see that. Like, there's a couple I use, like YouTube is going to stay on my phone.
Of course.
But all the games and all the little trivial stuff, like Flappy Bird didn't even last 3 months, So
well, he took it down himself.
Right. Retention is an issue, really.
Part of that is kind of what we're talking about. It's refreshed content. So like you're going to stay at an app. if it changes over time, if it's got better over time.
Or if they add new levels,
Right.
or if they, yeah.
And YouTube is kind of the definition of, like, you can never get, like, it's sort of like you could never watch it all.
Right.
It's almost like the internet within the internet.
That's right.
Right? So you're never going to not need
I'm
it.
done the internet.
But
Yeah.
how are you going to keep going back to Memorado? Because like your brain, you want to always have continual improvement.
Yeah.
So even if it's small and incremental, you're going to be after a couple of years think I'm supposed to be able to memorize 500 numbers in a row now, but I can only actually or whatever.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I'm level 69 master.
Yeah.
But I can't find my keys.
I think
still.
either you're going to have one of two outcomes. Either people get bored with it before they achieve maximum brain development capacity with the app and they stop using it, or you do reach whatever level you can reach, and then there's no point to doing it anymore because it's not helping you advance any further. Right?
They did say something about 10% of it has been unlocked, or the potential of it. They said.
Well, that was kind of
it
their
feels-
assessment of the area in general, like the brain training space, right?
Right.
I see.
We figured out 10% of it, and there's still 90% we still got to get right.
It seems very much like this is unlike many apps and unlike many startups, this is a real scientific pursuit.
Right.
That there are real PhDs in psychology and in academics that are working on this problem and would be able to presumably demonstrate if someone's good at some mechanical game or something, they would be better at something in the real world. So it feels like there is probably some proof out there that
Well, look at like Match.com. He talks about the science behind it, right? But they keep the science behind the curtains. They just say you want to find a match, and we're using science to do that. And so that's kind of what Luminosity
But they have to, right?
are.
And any of these groups that are proclaiming we're using an algorithm to maximize your outcomes for something that's hard to measure, like relationship compatibility or brain capability. You have to say that you're doing it that way for marketing purposes, right? You're not going to say like it's all just guesswork, but we're hoping the placebo effect makes it seem like you're doing well,
or trial and error.
Or you could do religion based, like Christianity, the dating website,
Christian Mingle.
Yeah. So it's not science; it's God telling you.
Incidentally, if you ever get a chance, I'll put a link to it maybe after this podcast. But there's a parody video called Christian Tingle out there on YouTube where I was laughing my head off at it because they had a mobile app that if the phone goes from portrait to landscape, it sends you an alert, and it shows a couple kind of making out, and as they lean down onto the couch, it goes bzz, 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 and kind of alerts him because the phone is
Gotcha.
They're trying to keep you pure.
Sure.
Anyway,
and make sure you see some light between those two people. That
that's
kind of
right.
thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
All right. Well, once again, a perfect segue. Now that we've covered Christian Mingle and Christian Tingle, there's it's not a perfect segue at all. The last article
Now it is.
That was
last article we want to talk about here. There's a couple new apps that have come out recently. Very, very simple apps, but hopefully useful to some people that will keep your computer from falling asleep. Keep it in awake mode. I know on my computer actually, I think it's after 15 minutes it goes into power saver mode, which means not only does the screen shut off, but the actual CPU
the hard drive
goes
maybe.
into some power saving mode, and the light just blinks instead of staying solid. And I find it very frustrating because I can't actually shake my mouse to wake it up. I have to hit a key on the keyboard, and depending what program happens to be open on my computer at the time, then I could be starting a video playing again,
Or you could be
whatever,
launching a nuclear war.
Sure.
I potentially
if you
could
had that
be.
app.
And so here's a couple of simple apps that purport to be able to solve the problem of people's computers falling asleep. And one of them is called Mouse Jiggle. It essentially jiggles your mouse to keep your screen on.
I love the name.
And you can either have it do an actual jiggle, like you'll be able to see the cursor kind of moving every now and then, or it can do what's called the Zen jiggle, which means it jiggles like behind the scenes. You don't see the jiggle happening on the screen, but trust me, it's jiggling.
It's under the sheets.
Right. And the other one is another program called, now let me see here, Caffeine And so caffeine every 59 seconds will hit the F5 key, F15 key on your keyboard. And now most people don't actually have an F15 key on their keyboard, but apparently Windows recognizes the hitting of an F15 key, even if you don't actually have a physical version of it.
That's funny because I was just thinking, I don't think I've ever hit the lonely 15 before.
I don't think I've even gotten past probably F5.
Yeah.
I see my keyboard goes up to F12, so potentially we could be effing all over the place. But but anyway, F15 is the way this was. So, let me ask you guys, is this a solution without a real problem? Is this something I can just do in my power saver?
It kind of feels so. Here's and I've just been hit with this, so my analogy may be rusty, but it feels a little bit like so certainly Windows and Macs have the ability to turn this function off, turn sleep off, or extend it or whatever. It sort of feels like I'm going to buy for my car. I'm going to buy some things to go next to the wheel so the car doesn't roll when I stop it.
Right.
So I could buy those.
Yeah.
Or I could just put it in park.
Right.
So the car already comes with the functionality to do this. It's just that I haven't quite learned it or I haven't quite figured it out. And I think that's what and so it's going after the niche of people that
can't figure out the power saver mode on their computer,
or don't have an understanding that this could be done in other ways. So it's sort of like, wouldn't it be, Darren? Wouldn't it be great if we could keep your car in one place?
Right,
that would be great, wouldn't it? Like, yeah, that would be great.
We could call it park. Oh, wait a second.
And it's kind of like that. So if no one's ever thought of if someone has experienced, wow, this is really annoying when my computer goes to sleep, and someone says, I have a solution for you, then you're going to be like, give me some of that.
Yeah, sure.
But rather, so because they never thought about thought that there might be a solution to it. If you're offering a solution, sold.
Now, but let me say this. I consider myself fairly tech savvy for the most part. I can find control panel, I can find the power settings, I can find where I set the screensaver on my computer. As far as I've been able to deduce, this is something that's like a hardware thing, because however I've adjusted those settings on my computer, my CPU still decides to put itself to sleep at a certain point, and maybe I got to get you to come over, Dave. I see you shaking your head.
I'm worried about your earlier statement about being tech savvy.
No, but really, man, like this is I deal with this every single day. My computer's going to sleep, and I found myself thinking maybe I should download some Zen Mouse Jiggler action.
Wow,
there's absolutely, without a doubt, there's a way to stop this from happening, Darren.
All right,
we can work on that.
My history with computers, when I invented the computer, shortly after I was born. Because I've had so many different computers, and I think I have 5 in my house now, I have sworn off power saving. I have a carbon footprint, and I probably use most of it is up in computing and screen power, because I don't want. I've just turn it off now.
Yeah.
Don't touch my computer. I'll turn it on, and then I'm in front of my computer and do not do anything. So my screen always stays on. It never goes off. My CPU never goes off. My hard drive never goes off.
Right.
And that's it. And so when I'm done, I turn it off. Yeah. And if I'm distracted for 15 minutes, my carbon footprint goes up. But that's fine with me. Sure. I don't want, because I've had computers that don't come out of sleep mode. I've had hard drives crash. Sure. And so as the whole sleep mode thing has come along, so this is a non-starter for me, because I would never even enter this space of it's another problem that I see.
You figured out how you found the settings.
It was
to not.
The setting was shut it off, essentially.
Absolutely. I don't want to play that.
But I would be happy. I have a big giant power button on my monitor that I'm very happy to just hit that button when I walk away from the computer and press it again when I come back. But even when I do that, I still have to wake up my CPU. It's my tower still decides, I'm going to sleep after this much time.
Yeah.
This reminds me of something that's been annoying to me ever since I've ever used Windows, from day one, or maybe day 2. Let's call it day 2.
All right.
So I've used Windows forever.
Yeah.
All of us probably have.
Sure.
Every time I get a new system, I have to do the same things. I have to go to Internet Explorer. I have to go to Explorer and
delete it.
Delete Internet Explorer. But I'm actually, I meant Explorer, not Internet Explorer.
Windows Explorer. Yes.
I have to go to Windows Explorer and and show extensions and all those kind of things. And my beef always has been, so like the collective effort that I've spent customizing things, why doesn't it just know me by now?
But I think it does now. Correct me if I'm wrong, because with Windows, my latest Windows 8, I remember I had a desktop. I had Windows 8 on my desktop. When I bought my laptop, which is also a Windows computer, as soon as I logged in with my same Microsoft login credentials, at the very least, it set the same screen background and a few other kind of settings that I had set up on my desktop for me over here. I don't know if power settings and file extension settings transfer over, but I know I can very much relate to
and
your
Macs
situation.
have been doing this for a while, but still, like part of the whole what I like about software and the way that I always want to design software is like if you've learned something about me, keep that in mind.
Yes.
And just keep it forever, and even establish patterns and sort of understand what I've done means something,
right?
And remember that,
right?
Because there's incredibly sophisticated systems out there that can understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and whatever. Just remember that, so that it knows me instead of just being a stranger every time I start a new computer.
Yeah,
it doesn't know you. You don't get a Christmas card from Microsoft every year.
Absolutely not, and I'm a little upset about that.
You used to work there, or you didn't actually tell us if you took the job.
No, I turned them down. Okay, so
no Christmas card.
Here's the story. The story was I went for an interview at Microsoft. They flew me out to Seattle.
Wow.
I went for an interview at Netscape. They flew me to California.
Wow.
I came back and I was like, well, it was fun. And this was in the span of probably 2 weeks or something.
Sure.
That I went to these two trips. And I came back, and a week or so later, I had 2 offer letters sitting on my coffee table.
Wow.
One from Microsoft and one from Netscape.
Yep.
And I sort of...
And Netscape paid more? You like California better than Seattle?
Well, probably it was both.
Okay.
And I thought, at the time I was 20s, and I was at the time Netscape was probably more or less equivalent to Google.
Right.
And Microsoft,
like the cool place to be.
And Microsoft at the time was equivalent to Microsoft now.
Right. Well, and let me just officially say, let's transition into talking about you here, Dave.
Okay.
I think we've covered mouse jiggling and F15 enough, but. I'm very interested to kind of hear, because you've been. I would assume this offer and you accepting the offer from Netscape took place like in the late 90s or mid-90s?
Late 90s, yeah.
So you've been around for a little while.
I've been around for a while.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about like the Netscape days? What was that like?
Yeah, that was great. It was. I was there just before. I was there actually just after 95 or so, and then maybe up to 2000 or so. Okay. And yeah, it was a great experience. All the way from when they hired me, they shipped me down there and brought all of my stuff with me, and
sure.
Lots of great experiences around moving and packing and whatever. All the way to at the time, Netscape was Google,
right?
In almost every way. So it was like the cool place to work. Yeah. And when we were in Mountain View, California, which is where Google is now.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, my apartment was probably 200 meters from where the Googleplex is now, so I could have just stayed there and walked there.
Yeah.
Were they talking stock options with you and stuff? Like when were you able to get vested with them or anything like that at that time?
When I left, I did okay, and then we came back and did a startup. But my days at Netscape were fun, and even like I've been to Google a couple times down in the valley, meeting people and whatever, and having some meals with them and late nights with them kind of thing. And they've always got food, and they've always got great stuff. And they always kind of look at me and go, huh? Great, huh? Huh? Pretty good, huh?
Come on.
And with the sort of like big-eyed kind of open-mouthed look.
Yeah.
And I kind of look at, and I disappoint them every time, because I was like, yeah, you guys didn't invent this.
Yeah.
Like
you were here before that.
Yeah, like way back when I was at Netscape, we had this fantastic meals and sort of like 7 or 8 different stations where you could get, like at lunch you can get sushi and you can get hot and cold and whatever. And then we had the in-house dentist and the in-house doctors and whatever. Like they
wow.
And even like one of the greatest stories is they had a concierge, a couple concierge at Netscape, and my mom came down to visit me in California.
Sure.
And I called up the concierge and I said, I need something to do with her for every day for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they came back with, here's your itinerary. Here's what you're doing. Well, they asked me some interests and stuff, what does she like to do, that kind of thing, so they could personalize it.
Yeah.
And the second week you came back and said, well, I need somebody that looks just like me to hang out with my mother
I'm tired
for the
out
second
now.
week.
Wow.
I'm not talking about you, Mom.
And it was like, the funny thing is, like, all these things sound great.
Yeah.
And I've done them in the past. Like, I've carried that on, and I've, places I've gone away, I've provided meals and all those kind of things, because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But the reason really is because it keeps you on the campus.
Right.
So every moment you're not on the campus, if you're on the campus, you may be doing productive stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not on the campus, you're probably not.
Yeah. I felt when I visited Google, which their office here in Kitchener is in the very building that we're recording in right now.
Yeah, 300 meters away, maybe 200.
Yeah, that's right. But when I visited their offices, I very much felt that. Like, everything here is designed to keep me here as long as I can possibly stay. Because I found myself saying, like, I could live here. Like, I could literally eat every meal here enjoyably. There's cool spaces to hang out and relax. There's cool workspaces, like, smart people all around you. Like, I wouldn't have to leave, and I would feel very fulfilled. Now, I have a wife and children, so there's always that factor.
They can drive by and wave at you.
When I was in California, I had none of the above.
Right.
So I was there till I had to go to bed, and then I'd oftentimes just go to sleep at the office.
Sure.
Because, as you said, everything I need is there.
Yeah.
And it's all provided for, and breakfast was fantastic, and like everything was right there, and there's a lot of productive work that comes out of that.
Sure.
So out of a really accommodating environment.
Let me ask you this: what was it like to kind of be, a part of architecting the structure of the internet, like pre Facebook, pre YouTube, Google hadn't really started dominating the search scene even yet, I think, in those days at all, right?
Yeah, they didn't even exist.
Oh, see, there you go. So, what was it like to be kind of, building the early pieces of the internet back in those days?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, at the time, obviously, you never know what's ahead, and we were probably early. We were early users and early inventors of some of the internet stuff.
Right.
But I probably, if you would ask me at the time, anything that's going on right now, could you imagine that you'd be able to do X and Y online? I would have said yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I
sure.
would have said totally yeah.
Sure.
So like, not as boring as that is, nothing really blows me away. Like, I'm still get excited by a new app that does this and that, but it's still like, that's completely in the realm of possibility.
Sure.
And I would have thought that way back then.
Sure.
When I was at Netscape, one of the things I did was something that no one even knows about anymore. It was NNTP, news. So we did. I was doing
news
the news
hypertext
server.
protocol.
No, it was NNTP,
protocol?
Network News Transfer Protocol.
Oh, Network News Transfer Protocol. Okay.
So news. If anyone knows Usenet.
Right. Yeah.
So Usenet, where it used to be sort of the bulletin board platform of the day.
Right.
And that was kind of so you used to have sort of mail was over here, and then news was over here, and then the web was over here.
Yeah.
And they were distinct things.
Sure.
Different apps, different ports.
And you had newsreader programs,
That's right.
that you would buy to,
That's right.
or use to access that data. Yeah.
And so there were online bulletin boards, and that's what I was one of the big things that I was working with.
Yeah.
And we had gigantic customers that were doing big implementations of using news.
Right. Interesting.
And what I understand now, it's still being used in some places, oftentimes for. They're called whereas stuff, like sketchy sort of
pirated software
and things like that. But I've also heard it being used for the back end protocol for some sort of bulletin boardy kind of things, where you don't even know you're using NNTP,
right?
But you are.
Interesting.
I remember in Sweden they had one Netscape NNTP server, news server,
right,
in the whole country.
Right.
And we were sort of part of that whole deal, and it was kind of interesting to watch it kind of grow. But I hear it's still there.
Netscape didn't let you keep any IPs or any Do you have any patents or anything like that?
No,
from back
nothing
then?
like that.
You're not getting a royalty check from
All I have is stories.
every news feed that goes up. Yeah, well, those are rich.
They're nice stories,
Those are
though.
worth good things.
So after Netscape, you say you left in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And you had a startup.
Went to a startup
Yeah.
in Toronto, actually.
Okay.
And the startup eventually grew from 5 guys sitting around a table, much like this table,
Yeah.
at one of the investors' boardrooms, to round about 300 people.
Wow. And what did you guys do?
So it started off as being let's call it a workflow rules engine.
Okay.
And the idea.
Workflow rules engine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the idea was kind of, it's, in some ways shades of the button. Okay. So let me walk you through this. So what it would do is it would sort of listen for different things, and it would act on those different things. So it would say if an email got dropped in an inbox somewhere, it might do something about it.
Right.
Or if someone hit a website, or if we had plugins for other sort of events,
Right.
time and that kind of thing as well. It would trigger a workflow. It would trigger a workflow that could do stuff like send an email, do a bunch of things, and it used to have different sort of flowchart mechanisms where it would wait for certain things.
Yeah.
So you can imagine you could practically build a piece of software out of these bits and pieces, these gates.
Right.
And eventually, that's what happened. So we built this rules engine that was nice, and it could even make web pages, and it got pretty extensive.
Yeah.
And here's a great example of a company that can do everything doesn't do so well.
Right.
It doesn't do enough specialization.
Exactly. Like if your pitch is, what do you guys do? Well, we can do whatever you want.
We make any kind of shoe.
Yeah.
Instead of just stilettos or just running
That's
shoes
right.
or soccer cleats or something.
Sure.
So the company became a CRM company built on this sort of rules engine that we built.
Right. And CRM we can define for people who don't know the term is customer
relationship management. So Salesforce.
Right.
So it became a CRM company, and it became wildly popular, built on this thing that we envisioned actually when we were back in California.
Wow. Cool. That's awesome.
So that's a good test of if you can walk out on the street and say, do you have problem X to somebody?
Yeah.
And someone says, yes, then keep talking.
Yeah.
And if they say no, then move
walking.
on.
Yeah. There you go.
Whereas if you say,
Yeah.
if the approach is more like, what kind of problems do you have? That's a pretty weak pitch.
Right. Or it's a weak start to your pitch.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're not getting your target market.
So let's just to push the story along here. So I know,
Oh, boy.
yeah, you had this startup in Toronto. I know at some point you were involved in like a marathon running video creation startup, which I thought was a cool thing. Do you want to just take 30 seconds to tell us what that?
So I moved around a lot after the startup. Went to Vancouver for a long time,
Right.
And then came back and did a startup. That was really a lot of legwork, a little bit of tech, a lot of legwork, a lot of late nights.
Are you making a joke about marathon?
No, not at all. But now that you mention it,
That's a long way to go to get a joke.
so it was.
Thank you. Very, very
That's
funny.
right.
Yeah.
26.2 miles.
Yeah. So
the idea was, and it started off with an old friend at RIM,
Right.
Research in Motion here in Waterloo,
which is now BlackBerry. Yep.
And it started off with the idea of people want to do stuff, or people want to sort of be the star in their own movie,
Right.
and that's kind of what has kind of spawned a lot of things, like the social networking, and Facebook is kind of like, I want to be a star in my own movie world,
or YouTube,
or
almost the whole of
Twitter.
YouTube.
Like if people are like proclaiming what they're eating or something, they want people to follow and be stars.
Sure.
So it started with that, and we kind of transitioned, and it was a long journey.
Yeah.
But eventually we became
another marathon joke there for you.
It's true.
Yeah.
I keep hitting these. Eventually it became let's actually do that then. Let's make them the star of of an event that they're covering, that they're doing.
Sure.
And we talked about things like being the star of your visit to Disneyland or something like that.
Right.
Kind of been done already, and it was something beyond, a little bit beyond our reach. But what was in our reach was we bought a bunch of digital cameras, a bunch of nice big tripods, and some sandbags, and I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning at one point making sandbags, which is really funny, to hold the tripods down
so they don't blow over.
So
you set up the equipment along the marathon route.
Right.
You leave it there by itself, which
Yep.
seems to me a very precarious
Risky.
thing to do. But
didn't get ripped off at all. That was
awesome.
good.
And then I guess at the end of the process, you hunt through the footage to find the individual that you're creating the video
right.
of and tailor
right.
together. So I'm pushing forward here because we
Yeah.
got like a little less than 10 minutes left.
It
and I
almost
wanna give
sounds
you a
like
chance to talk about everything
one of our
else.
previous guests, Mark from the Rockstar Cafe, where
Yeah.
he's taking that focus of, making you the superstar of something.
Right.
And he's doing that in his cafe, sharing, sort of centers of influence and people that can mentor, and doing that around a coffee shop. So it's kind of similar, kind of.
Yeah.
And that was a sort of like the company was called My Race Video,
Right.
which was a long URL. I don't even own it anymore. I don't think. But it was sort of a strange adaptation to this idea of people want to be stars.
Right.
And that's so we kind of got onto this and bought a bunch of cameras and did a bit of tech to find people.
Yeah.
In these 10 or so cameras that we had.
Sure, because that's a lot of footage you have to hunt through.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah.
So we had a little bit of tech to help us, but still, it wasn't. It was a lot of late nights of like that guy looks like the guy. and yeah.
So it's almost like going to Canada's Wonderland and riding the roller coaster and coming off at the end and seeing your picture coming down the roller coaster, except you
Right.
had 10 that you could choose from.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what we had was we also hired some students from the film school in Toronto, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The Toronto Film School.
Toronto Film School, yeah.
That would make sense. And we hired some students to do what we called the color shots.
Right.
So they'd kind of walk around and watch people, take video of people tying their shoes and take video of people, setting up and doing,
the filler shots
That's
to
right.
set the location and theme and everything.
So what happened, and also followed the leaders too. So we'd get on the leader truck,
Right.
that would drive in front of the leaders.
Sure.
So we'd have cameras on them and whatever. So it was a little bit of a TSN style thing with you spliced in.
Right.
Which and we had. Voiceover guy. We hired voiceover guy. We actually hired the voiceover guy from It's Worth the Drive to Acton.
I remember him. For leather, yeah.
For those who are in the local area listening
Right.
to
That's
this,
hilarious.
most of us grew up knowing that commercial.
Yes.
If you're anywhere outside of the Greater Toronto area, you probably have no clue.
That's
but
right.
anyway,
Was
yes.
that Leather by Man? Is that what that was? Or
No, that was,
No, it was the Old Hide House.
Old Hide
The
House.
Old Hide
That's
House.
right.
That's what it was.
So there's this famous voice personality that is a part of everyone around here, and I think he does weather now or something somewhere.
He very well might, yeah.
Where do you go after that? Like after It's Worth the Drive to Acting, it's not, right?
Maybe you go to
You're
Acton.
typecast and your career's over.
So we hired this guy, and that was some of my experience with voice acting, because this guy I've never met a voice actor, let alone an actor before.
Sure.
And so we set up at the CBC studios in Toronto, and we were recording all our shots, and the guy saw the script the first time, and he was bang on every time, perfect.
Wow.
awesome.
And I was like, okay, well, I guess that now I understand that it is a real
It's a
talent.
skill. It's not just anybody walking
Yeah.
up to a
Right.
mic. Yeah. As we demonstrate every week when we record these podcasts, I think.
Yeah, this is our fourth take.
Yes. We put no practice into these things. So I know at some point then later on you ended up at Igloo, which was a fairly well-known company in this area for software. Was it software development? I've only lived here for a year, so I'm going on past reputation.
It's a community platform.
Right.
And I was, what was my title? I don't know. Something senior software director, VP, something. I don't know.
Development. Something of development,
Maybe.
I thought. But yes, okay. Yes. VP of development.
Yeah, something like that. So that was a great experience. Part of the awesome part of that was we were kind of a startup, but with some incubating as well. So
Right.
we started off at CG,
Right.
which is it stands for Center for International Governance Innovation.
Okay.
It's a big mouthful.
Yeah. It sounded like it was 2 letters, but apparently there were a lot more.
CIGI is
okay. Gotcha.
And it was awesome because we sort of started off as being an incubated sort of thing, and we were building a platform that was for academics to communicate across the world about certain topics. And at some point, someone said, "Well, wouldn't it be neat if we could just make that adaptable to other purposes?"
Right.
Went out and got funding, and impressed a few people, and had a couple of really tough meetings, and got some funding, and eventually moved out of the building and moved into our own building.
Wow.
And grew up and did some fancy stuff, and it was a great experience.
Went through all the ups and downs that companies tend to go through.
A lot of ups and downs.
Sure.
Yeah, and certainly, learning along the way, and I learned a lot of things. I learned lots of great things from Igloo, and some of them I have to say are because of the bad things that happened.
Yeah.
So some failing forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. You tend to learn more from the failures from the successes, I think.
That's
anyway, right? So absolutely.
And certainly, I've been mentoring here with Velocity, and many of the bits of advice that I give are from experience, and mostly from bad experience.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So now you're working with RENOMii.
Right.
And maybe you can just give us the brief kind of 30-second version of what RENOMii does or what they're all about.
I don't know if I need 30 seconds.
Okay.
So RENOMii is poised to make the miscommunication between contractor and homeowner smooth out.
Okay.
And essentially, if people are listening and they have a bit of tech understanding and a bit of process understanding, it's change management for the renovation industry.
Okay.
Meaning changes inevitably happen in every project, in renovation as with any other project, and this is a negotiation tool. It's a way to smooth out the miscommunication.
Time.
33 seconds.
I got 30 seconds there. You didn't realize you were being...
Whoa.
It's all good.
There was too much stammering in there, folks.
If we take out the stammering, it's definitely...
Yeah, we can work on that elevator.
All right, done.
Okay, cool. And so you have this tool, and your role, we know you're the CTO, but as far as your day-to-day there, is it managing? Is it code writing? Is it...
It's a little bit of everything, I guess, but... So I do write a lot of code there.
Okay.
And maybe much of my day is writing code, which is kind of neat because I haven't written code in a long time.
Sure. Good way to get back into the flow of it, I guess. Right?
Yeah. Like I've managed big teams and had people reporting to people under me, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that, that's fun, and that's a lot of you get a lot of enjoyment out of. The successes that they have.
Sure.
But building something yourself is so tactile and rewarding, isn't it?
And you go home and you say, wow, I went from point A to point B, and I can articulate exactly what that was. Whereas if you're managing people, you're like, I'm sure the ball moved forward today, but I can't articulate exactly what it was that made it move forward.
It's true, yeah. I equate it. I've done some teaching in my own background, and a lot of times students come in and you try to teach them a bunch of stuff, and when they leave the classroom, you're like, are they really any better than when they came in? I'm not really sure, but when you're building something and you can see a finished result sitting in front of you, and now this thing works that didn't work before, or this thing looks beautiful that didn't exist before, then there's that real kind of satisfaction attached to it, right?
Yes, it's. I mean, I've always tried to keep up a little bit of my programming skills, just because I've always, I've managed teams of teams, kind of thing,
right.
that are doing programming, and I always want to be able to, I don't know, have a bit of a filter to say, yeah, I think you're leading me astray here, or I want to please tell me more about that, and I wanted to have a point of reference.
Sure.
So you're still programming, you're just not using a keyboard, you're using people.
Yes, exactly right.
You got to push the people down.
Programming the masses.
I used to call it organizational design.
Right. It's a good word for it. I think that works.
Organized chaos.
That's right.
So does RENOMii have a product that our listeners can go and see or experience? Or
it is online. RENOMii.com, RENOMii.com.
All right.
We've got... It's right now there. So we've got a version that's coming out in the next couple of days. Actually, that is homeowner focused. Right now, our product is contractor focused, where contractor comes in, signs up, can do what he needs to do in terms of change management. In a couple of days, a new release is coming out that is a homeowner can sign up and do those same things for his own renovation project.
Right. Okay.
So it's a pretty neat thing, and a big portion of it is Dave.
That's awesome. So if you're checking out the software, you know the person to blame or to praise for how well it works, right? Awesome. We should wrap up here soon. We're just hitting the 1 hour mark now, but if we wanted to go and find out anything more about you, can we follow you on Twitter or I guess you're on LinkedIn maybe?
I'm on LinkedIn for sure. Please find me.
Can we just follow you around in general?
You can absolutely. I think I'm fairly conspicuous. LinkedIn, Twitter. I don't tweet a lot, but I should.
Sure.
If more people follow me, I promise I will. Let me make a commitment.
We'll get all 12 listeners of the podcast to be your followers and see if that motivates you.
That means I have to make 6 new Twitter accounts then.
Here's my commitment.
Yep.
For each new person that follows me, I will tweet once.
All right.
That's more than I've done in the last year, probably.
Excellent.
If one person signs up.
I don't even know if I follow you, so you might have at least one tweet coming in the queue once I sign up.
Okay.
There you go. Awesome. What is your Twitter handle, if we wanted to find you?
At Dave Shak.
Okay. Yeah. And that's SHAK.
That's right.
No CK involved, just the K.
No CK.
Right. Cut out the extraneous letters. That's what I would say.
If you wanted to, I've got a bunch of URLs related. Like I've got davidshack.com and I've got
Shack Attack.
I've got shackattack.ca and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well,
go give me some hits to those pages.
There's lots of ways we can cyberstalk you, I think is what you're saying. Awesome. Well, let's wrap things up here. Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us. I'm always fascinated by stories of kind of like the early days of the internet. And even though for me I was in kind of university by that point already, it still feels like it was so long ago, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't really that long ago. But anyway, let me thank you, our listeners, for joining us on another episode of TSP Weekly, and offer our thanks once again to Communitech for letting us use their space here. Always great to be here in the midst of the buzz.
Thank you.
To you, our listeners, please feel free to send us your comments, your questions, your criticisms, your feedback. You can reach us by email at feedback@tspweekly.com. You can find us on Twitter at tspweekly.com, or you can leave a comment on our website under the posting for this podcast. And feel free to say whatever you like. So, for myself, Darren Conley, my host, my co-host, Stephen Campbell.
Quiblo.
And from our guest, Dave Shak, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you all next week.